The rain had already soaked through her thin coat by the time she lifted the mattress onto her shoulder. Cars slowed, people stared, but no one stopped. To them, she was just another exhausted woman dragging the remains of a broken life down an expensive street where people paid more for silence than sympathy. A single mother with trembling arms, two small children walking behind her, and a torn suitcase rolling unevenly over the wet pavement. But when billionaire Adrian Blackwell stepped out of his private car, his entire world stopped. He had seen poverty before. He had seen desperation. He had even seen betrayal dressed up as business. But he had never seen a woman carry humiliation with such quiet dignity. The mattress nearly slipped from her arms. Her little daughter rushed forward, trying to help, while her son clutched a plastic bag filled with clothes that had been thrown into the mud only minutes earlier. Adrian moved to help her. Then he heard the laughter. Across the road, standing behind the iron gates of a mansion, a well-dressed man watched with a glass of wine in his hand. Beside him stood a glamorous woman in diamonds, smiling as if the scene were entertainment. An older woman, cold-eyed and proud, shouted for the guards to make sure that beggar never returned. That beggar was the man's wife. That beggar was the mother of his children. And that beggar was hiding a secret so powerful it could destroy every person who had just thrown her into the street. Her name was Elena Vale. For 12 years, she had lived as a quiet housewife, letting her husband believe he was the empire, the provider, the king. She cooked his meals, raised his children, protected his reputation, and signed nothing without reading every line twice. What he never knew was that before she married him, Elena had inherited a fortune buried beneath layers of trusts, offshore holdings, private equity, and silent partnerships. $8.9 billion. Not a rumor. Not a dream. A fortune. And the mansion he had just kicked her out of. Hers. The company he bragged about building. Saved by her money. The luxury lifestyle his mistress thought she had stolen. Paid for by the woman now walking barefoot through the rain. Adrian froze when he saw where she was going, not to a shelter, not to a friend, not to beg for mercy. She was walking straight toward the headquarters of the most powerful legal firm in the city. By sunrise, every bank account would be frozen. By noon, every secret contract would surface. By evening, her husband, his mistress, and his cruel mother would learn the truth. They had not thrown out a helpless woman. They had awakened a queen. And when Elena Vale finally turned around, rain dripping from her face, she smiled for the first time that night. Because revenge had already begun. Adrian Blackwell had built his fortune by knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. In boardrooms, silence was pressure. In negotiations, silence was a weapon. In grief, silence was mercy. But that night, standing beneath the silver rain, while Elena Vale carried a mattress down a store row like a woman dragging the last piece of a ruined kingdom, silence felt like cowardice. "Ma'am," he called. Elena did not stop. Her daughter Lily looked back first. She was 8 years old, with wet curls plastered to her cheeks and a face too old for her age. Her eyes moved from Adrian's polished shoes to his black car, then to the driver waiting with an umbrella. She had already learned the speed with which rich people could become dangerous. Elena shifted the mattress higher on her shoulder. "Keep walking, Lily." The little boy, Noah, stumbled beside her, clutching the plastic bag with both hands. A sleeve from a school uniform dangled out and dragged across the wet sidewalk. Adrian took 2 steps forward. "Let me help you." That made her stop. Not because she trusted him, not because she needed him, because the word help had become unfamiliar enough to sound suspicious. She turned slowly. Her face was pale, her lips bluish from the cold, but her eyes were steady. Adrian had stared down senators, oil kings, tech founders, and men who could buy islands before breakfast, but Elena Vale looked at him as though she were weighing his soul against the rain. "No," she said. The answer came clean and sharp. Behind the mansion gates, Victor Hawthorne laughed again. It was loud enough to cross the street. He raised his glass as though toasting the scene. "There she goes," he called. "The martyr, don't let her fool you, Blackwell, she's dramatic." Adrian's jaw tightened at the sound of his name, so Victor recognized him. Of course he did. Men like Victor Hawthorne recognized power the way dogs recognized meat. Celeste Marlowe, Victor's mistress, leaned against him in a white fur coat that looked almost obscene in the rain. She tilted her chin, diamonds glittering at her ears. "Maybe she can sell the mattress," Celeste said. Victor's mother, Beatrice Hawthorne, gave a humorless smile. "She should be grateful we let her keep that much." Elena's hand curled around the mattress fabric. For one moment, the quiet mask cracked. Not enough for tears, not enough for pleading, just enough for Adrian to see the wound beneath the dignity. Then the mask returned. "Children," she said softly, eyes forward. And they obeyed. That was the first thing Adrian noticed. Not the mattress, not the bare feet, not the impossible humiliation of a woman forced out of her own home in front of neighbors who pretended not to see. He noticed that her children obeyed because they trusted her. Not feared her. Trusted her. His own childhood flashed across his mind, uninvited. A narrow kitchen in Queens, his mother standing between him and his father's rage, a cracked plate, a winter night, a suitcase, the smell of rain leaking through an old window. He had been 9 when he watched his mother choose dignity over comfort, and he had never forgotten the shape of her back as she walked away with nothing but a boy and a bus ticket. That memory was the reason Adrian had become a billionaire. It was also the reason he could not stand still now. He moved closer, keeping enough distance not to frighten the children. "I won't touch your things unless you allow it," he said, "but your son is shivering." Elena glanced down. Noah's lips were trembling. He tried to hide it, clenching his jaw like a tiny soldier who had been ordered not to break. That did something to her. Adrian saw it. The one place she could be struck was through them. "My car is warm," Adrian said. "Your children can sit inside while you finish whatever you came here to do." Elena looked past him to the tall glass building at the end of the block. Harcourt, Lane and Row, 56 floors of steel, marble, and quiet destruction. The kind of legal firm powerful people hired when they did not want justice. They wanted victory. Adrian knew it well. He had used them once, years ago, and promised himself never again. "You know that building?" Elena asked. "Yes." "Then you know I'm not going there to ask for kindness." "No one goes there for kindness." Something passed between them, not trust, not yet, but recognition. Elena lowered the mattress. It landed heavily against the sidewalk. Lily immediately grabbed her brother's hand. 10 minutes, Elena said. "They sit in the car for 10 minutes. The driver stays visible, no locked doors." Adrian nodded once, "Of course." His driver, Marcus, stepped forward and opened the rear door. Warm air spilled out. Lily hesitated until Elena touched her shoulder. "It's all right," Elena said. Noah looked up. "Mom, are we sleeping outside?" The question was small enough to break something. Elena crouched in front of him, ignoring the rain pouring down her back. "No, baby." "But Grandma said." Grandma was wrong. He looked unconvinced. Elena cupped his face. "Have I ever failed you?" Noah shook his head. "Then don't start doubting me tonight." Lily helped him into the car. Adrian watched Elena watch them. The second the door closed, she inhaled like a woman who had been holding her breath for years. "You should leave," she told him. "I probably should." "You're not going to." "No." She almost smiled. Almost. Billionaires usually have better survival instincts. Not when children are involved. Her gaze sharpened. "You have children." "No." "Then you don't know." "No," he said quietly, "but I remember being one." For the first time, Elena looked at him not as a stranger but as a man. A tired man, a rich man, a dangerous man perhaps, but a man who had once been a boy in the rain. The gates across the street opened. Victor stepped out under a large umbrella held by one of the guards. He wore a navy suit, no tie, and the lazy smile of a man who had mistaken cruelty for confidence. Celeste followed, careful not to let the hem of her dress touch the wet ground. Beatrice remained under the portico, arms crossed, watching like a queen observing an execution. "Elena," Victor called, strolling closer, "don't make this uglier than it has to be." Elena did not turn. Victor's smile tightened. "I'm speaking to you." "I heard you." "Then answer." She finally looked at him. "You're not my husband anymore." The words hung in the rain. Victor laughed, but there was a flicker in his eyes. "That's not how marriage works." "No," Elena said, "but it is how betrayal works." Celeste gave a soft little gasp, theatrical and false. "Victor, please, I don't want drama." Elena's eyes moved to the diamonds at Celeste's throat, a necklace of pear-shaped stones, cold and clear. Adrian noticed Elena's gaze linger there for half a second too long. Later, he would understand why. For now, he only saw Victor step closer. "Listen carefully," Victor said in a lower voice. "You will not embarrass me. You will not run to lawyers. You will not make accusations. I have been generous. I let you take some clothes and the children's toys. You threw our son's asthma medicine into a puddle." Victor waved a hand. "It was an accident. You told the guards to search Lily's backpack in case I stole silverware." Celeste looked away, but not from shame, from boredom. Beatrice called from the gate, "Because you cannot trust women like her." Elena's expression did not change. "Women like me. Poor breeding shows eventually," Beatrice said. "My son married beneath himself, and tonight he corrected the mistake." Adrian saw the flash then, not anger, something colder, something old. Elena Vale had been humiliated tonight, but not surprised. That mattered. A woman surprised by betrayal might scream. A woman prepared for betrayal might wait. Victor mistook her silence for defeat. He always had. He came close enough that Adrian stepped half a pace forward. Victor noticed and smirked. "Careful, Blackwell. She has a gift for making men think she needs rescuing." Elena picked up the handle of her suitcase. "I don't need rescuing," she said. "I need a witness." The rain seemed to pause. Victor blinked. "What?" Elena turned toward Adrian. "Mr. Blackwell, you heard him admit he removed me and my children from the property. You saw my belongings in the street. You saw his mother instruct guards to keep me from entering. You saw the condition of the children. Correct?" Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Correct." Victor's smile vanished. "Now wait. You also saw Miss Marlowe wearing jewelry from the family vault," Elena continued, "including the Vale blue diamond necklace, itemized under Trust Asset Schedule C, line 42. Celeste's hand flew to her throat. Victor stared at Elena. For the first time that night, he looked uncertain. Elena opened her soaked purse and removed a phone sealed inside a clear plastic bag. She tapped the screen once. A tiny red recording light glowed. Victor's face drained of color. "You recorded this," he snapped. "No," Elena said. "I documented it." "That's illegal." "Not in this state, when one party consents." Adrian almost smiled. Victor pointed at her. "You think you're clever." "No," Elena said. "I think I was patient." That was the moment the first real crack appeared in Victor Hawthorne's world. It began quietly, as most collapses do. Not with thunder. With paperwork. Elena turned away from him and walked toward Harcourt, Lane and Row. Adrian followed at a distance, not because she asked him to, but because Victor had started moving after her. Marcus remained by the car with the children, standing under the umbrella like a wall. Inside the lobby, Everything smelled of polished stone and expensive air. Security guards looked up from behind a curved black desk. One of them frowned at the sight of Elena's wet clothes and bare feet. Another looked past her, recognized Adrian, and straightened. "I'm here to see Miriam Rowe," Elena said. The first guard hesitated. "Do you have an appointment?" Elena reached into her purse and removed a small silver card. Not a credit card, not a business card, something heavier, matte, engraved with a single letter. V. The guard's expression changed instantly. He picked up the phone. Victor burst through the revolving door seconds later, rain flying from his shoulders. "Stop her." The guards looked at him, then at Elena. "Sir," one asked. "My wife is emotionally unstable. She's trespassing." Elena stood very still. The guard holding the phone listened, then swallowed. "Mrs. Vale is expected." Victor's mouth opened slightly. "Not Mrs. Hawthorne. Mrs. Vale." The elevator doors opened at the far end of the lobby. An older woman stepped out, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, dressed in a charcoal suit. Miriam Rowe had the calm face of someone who had destroyed louder men than Victor before breakfast. She walked toward Elena without hurrying. When she saw Elena's bare feet, her expression hardened. "Who did this?" Elena did not look back. "My husband." Miriam's eyes moved to Victor. "Former, soon enough." Victor laughed once. "Miriam, this is absurd, whatever she told you." Miriam raised one hand. He stopped speaking. That was when Adrian knew Victor had no idea who his wife was. Because powerful men did not stop speaking for lawyers. They stopped speaking for lawyers who knew where the bodies of their secrets were buried. Miriam removed her coat and placed it around Elena's shoulders. "I told you to call me 3 years ago," she said softly. Elena looked down. "I wasn't ready." "And tonight?" Elena's eyes lifted. They were no longer tired. "Tonight he touched the children's things." Miriam nodded, as though that explained everything. "And perhaps it did." Victor's voice rose behind them. "Enough, Elena, tell these people you're my wife." Elena turned. For 12 years, Victor had seen her in kitchens, nurseries, school meetings, charity luncheons, hospital waiting rooms, and silent corners of rooms where men discussed fortunes she secretly controlled. He had seen her tired. He had seen her kind. He had seen her patient. He had never seen her like this. "I was your wife," she said. "I was never your property." Miriam looked at the guards. "Mr. Hawthorne is not permitted beyond the lobby." Victor recoiled. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," Miriam said. "That is why I'm asking security to be gentle." The elevator doors closed on Victor's stunned face. Only when they were rising toward the 56th floor did Elena let herself lean against the wall. Adrian stood beside her. "You planned this." Elena closed her eyes. "No, I prepared for it." "There's a difference." A plan means you want something to happen. Preparation means you know someone well enough to expect what they'll eventually do. The elevator climbed in silence. On the 33rd floor, Elena's mind slipped backward, not by choice but by exhaustion. She was 24 again, standing in the library of Vale House while her father, Thomas Vale, signed the last documents of his life with a trembling hand. He had been a difficult man, brilliant, cold in public, tender only when the world wasn't watching. He built Vale Global from shipping routes, mineral rights, medical patents, and one ruthless instinct: never trust anyone who profits from your blindness. "Listen to me, Ellie," he had said, his voice thin from illness. "A fortune is not money, it is gravity. People will orbit it, worship it, curse it, lie for it, marry for it, kill reputations for it. If you let them know where the center is, they will aim straight for your heart." She had laughed then, because she was young and in love with a charming man named Victor Hawthorne, who brought flowers to her father's hospital room and kissed nurses on the cheek. Her father had not laughed. "Hide it," he said. Not forever, just long enough to see who loves you when they think you have nothing. Elena had thought it cruel. Later, she would call it mercy. The elevator opened into a private reception area where two assistants were already moving with quiet urgency. Towels appeared, a medical kit, hot tea, children's sweatshirts, shoes in Elena's size. "Where are my children?" Elena asked immediately. Miriam's assistant answered, "Mr. Blackwell's driver is bringing them up with building security. They'll be here in 2 minutes." Elena looked at Adrian. He lifted both hands slightly. Visible driver, no locked doors. She studied him, then nodded. It was the first time she had accepted anything from him without suspicion. Miriam led them into a conference room where the far wall overlooked the city. Rain striped the windows. Below, a store row glittered like a necklace laid over a throat. The mattress was not there. The wet suitcase was not there. The street was far below. But Elena still felt the weight on her shoulder. Lily and Noah arrived wrapped in blankets, guided by Marcus and a woman from security. Noah ran straight to his mother. Elena knelt and caught him, then Lily, holding both so tightly that Adrian turned away to give them privacy. He pretended to study the skyline. Instead, he listened to Lily whisper, "Are we in trouble?" "No," Elena said, "not anymore." Miriam stood at the head of the table. "Elena, I need your authorization." Elena rose, keeping one hand on Noah's shoulder. "Do it." Miriam opened a folder. Adrian saw the names printed across the top. Vale Meridian Trust, Hawthorne Residential Holdings, Ardent Crown Capital, Mariner Child Protection Clause. He knew enough about wealth to recognize a fortress when he saw one. Miriam's voice became brisk. At 11:48 p.m., Victor Hawthorne denied the legal owner access to Vale House. At 11:52, Beatrice Hawthorne instructed private security to bar said owner and minor beneficiaries from the property. At 11:55, Celeste Marlowe was witnessed wearing restricted trust jewelry. At midnight, per the emergency misconduct provisions and marital asset protection covenants, we freeze all accounts connected to Hawthorne Industries, Hawthorne Personal Holdings, and any discretionary lines collateralized by Vale assets. Adrian looked at Elena. She was watching her children. Not the money. Not the revenge. The children. Miriam continued. We also notify the family court emergency judge, file for immediate protective residence access, report the trust asset misappropriation, and issue instructions to remove unauthorized occupants from Vale House by morning. Lily frowned. Does that mean we can go home? Elena looked down at her daughter. The question pierced her because home should have meant warmth, safety, pancakes on Sundays, pencil marks on a kitchen wall showing how much they had grown. But Victor had turned home into a stage where power performed. Beatrice had turned it into a courtroom where Elena was always guilty. Celeste had walked through it tonight as though choosing curtains for a palace already conquered. Elena touched Lily's cheek. It means we get to decide what home is now. Noah yawned against her. Miriam slid a document across the table. Sign here. Elena signed. Outside, lightning flashed. Across the city, invisible systems woke up. Bank servers flagged accounts. Private wealth managers received alerts they would not ignore. Security permissions changed. Legal notices flew into inboxes. A judge's clerk was awakened. A trust officer in Geneva answered a phone with a curse. A compliance director in London sat upright in bed. A vault manager on East 61st Street checked an inventory list and found the Vale blue diamond necklace marked as restricted. At 12:07 a.m., Victor Hawthorne's black credit card declined at his own bar cabinet vendor, where he was attempting to order a celebratory case of rare whiskey. At 12:12, Celeste Marlowe's phone buzzed with a message from her favorite jeweler. Payment issue. At 12:19, Beatrice Hawthorne tried to transfer $5 million into a private account in Monaco and received an error code she had never seen before. At 12:26, Hawthorne Industries' emergency counsel called Victor and asked, with naked fear in his voice, "What did you do to Elena?" Victor stood in the mansion foyer, still wet from the rain, surrounded by marble floors and portraits he had always hated because they were Vale's, not Hawthorne's. "What do you mean?" he snapped. "Every Vale-backed facility is frozen." "That's impossible." "No, impossible is what we call it when something cannot happen. This is happening." Victor turned slowly. Celeste was standing near the staircase, still wearing the blue diamond necklace. Beatrice stood beside the fireplace, one hand on the mantel, her face pale beneath her makeup. Victor lowered his voice. "Fix it." There was a pause on the line. "Victor," the lawyer said, "I don't think you understand. We don't work for you on this matter." Victor's grip tightened around the phone. "You are my counsel. We were retained through Vale Meridian Trust. So the trust has terminated authorization." Victor's voice became dangerous. "By whose order?" The lawyer did not answer immediately. Victor already knew. When the lawyer finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "Elena Vale." Celeste laughed nervously. "That's ridiculous. Elena doesn't have a trust. She doesn't even have a job." Beatrice stared at Victor. "What is he talking about?" Victor ended the call. For a moment, no one spoke. The mansion, which had always seemed to bend around Victor's moods, suddenly felt too large, too old, too watchful. Rain tapped the windows like fingers. Celeste touched the necklace again. "Victor." "Take that off," he said. Her face changed. "Excuse me." "The necklace, take it off." "But you gave it to me." "Take it off now." Celeste unclasped it with trembling fingers and dropped it onto the table as though it had become hot. Beatrice walked toward Victor. "What did you hide from me?" He turned on her. "What did I hide from you? You threw her belongings into the street. You told me she had nothing." "I thought she had nothing." That confession, shouted beneath the veil portraits, echoed like a curse. Victor remembered the first time he met Elena. She had been sitting alone at a charity auction, wearing a simple black dress and no jewelry except pearl earrings. Not diamonds, not emeralds, pearls. Old money sometimes dressed quietly, but Elena had seemed too unguarded, too sincere. He was 29, handsome, ambitious, carrying debt behind a smile polished by boarding schools his mother could barely afford. He had approached her because she looked lonely. He stayed because she listened, like his dreams mattered. On their third date, she took him to a small, family-owned restaurant instead of the private club he suggested. She ordered soup, laughed at his stories, and left a tip bigger than the bill. He had noticed that. He noticed everything. But when he asked what her family did, she only said, a little shipping, a little investing, mostly old mistakes. He thought she was modest. He thought modesty meant small. 6 months later, Thomas Vale died. At the funeral, Victor saw politicians, bankers, foreign ministers, art collectors, and 3 men whose faces had appeared on the cover of financial magazines. He asked Elena who they were. "Friends of my father," she said. "Important friends. Some of them think so." He should have understood then. But Victor had a special talent for ignoring facts that insulted his ego. After they married, money always appeared when he needed it, but never in a way that let him see the source. A loan approved unexpectedly, an investor suddenly interested, a supplier extending generous terms, a crisis solved by a quiet call Elena made from another room. He told himself it was luck. Then, as his company grew, he told himself it was genius. By the 5th year, he told others he had built everything alone. By the 7th, he believed it. By the 10th, he resented Elena for being present, while he enjoyed the life her hidden hand had made possible. By the 12th, he had convinced himself she was wait. That was how betrayal worked. It did not begin with another woman. It began with a man rewriting history until gratitude felt like oppression. Celeste had entered his life at a museum gala, glittering, hungry, and skilled at making men feel discovered. She admired his suits, his speeches, his temper. She never asked why certain doors opened for him. She simply enjoyed walking through them. Beatrice loved her instantly. She understands your world, Beatrice said after meeting Celeste. Victor did not remind her that his world had been furnished by Elena. He did not want to remember. By 2 in the morning, he had no choice. At Harcourt, Lane and Rowe, the children slept on a sofa in Miriam's private office. Lily had resisted sleep until Elena promised not to leave the room. Noah slept quickly, one hand curled around the sleeve of his mother's coat. Elena sat beside them in borrowed shoes, a blanket over her shoulders, signing document after document. Adrian remained near the window. He had been given several opportunities to leave. He ignored all of them. Miriam noticed. "Mr. Blackwell," she said, "are you here as a witness or as a participant?" "As a witness." "Then I'll need a statement." "You'll have it. And if this becomes public." His mouth curved. "I've survived worse headlines than telling the truth." Elena looked up. "You don't owe me anything." "No," Adrian said, "I owe someone else." She understood without asking. A mother, perhaps, a sister, some old ghost standing behind him in the rain. Miriam placed a tablet in front of Elena. "Emergency court review at 7. We'll seek temporary exclusive access to Vale House, custody stability, recovery of restricted assets, and financial injunctions. Victor may try to claim ignorance." "He is ignorant," Elena said. "Not a legal defense." "No, a personality." Adrian did smile then. Elena saw it, and despite herself, nearly returned it. The exhaustion was beginning to seep into her bones, not ordinary tiredness, the kind that came after years of swallowing words until they turned into stones. She had not always been silent. In the beginning, she challenged Victor, gently at first, then firmly. When he dismissed employees who disagreed with him, she warned him. When he borrowed against assets he didn't understand, she corrected him. When he shouted at a server during their anniversary dinner, she left the table. He apologized then. He used to apologize beautifully. Flowers, letters, kneeling beside her chair, promises whispered against her hands. "I'm under pressure," he would say. "You're the only one who sees the real me." For years, she believed that meant she was special. Later, she understood it meant she was useful. The first time Beatrice called her unworthy, Elena was pregnant with Lily. They were hosting a dinner for potential investors, and Elena had chosen not to wear the veil emeralds because she did not want attention. Beatrice cornered her near the pantry. "You should try harder," she said, eyes scanning Elena's simple dress. "Men like Victor rise quickly. Wives get left behind if they don't shine." Elena had smiled politely. "I'm not worried about being left behind." Beatrice leaned close. "You should be. My son was born for more than a quiet little woman with no ambition." Elena remembered touching her stomach, feeling Lily move. No ambition. She had almost told Beatrice then. She almost said, "Your son's new distribution contract exists because I own 30% of the Port Authority's parent company." She almost said, "The house you criticize me in belongs to my trust." She almost said, "The necklace around your throat was bought by my grandmother in 1948. But Thomas Vale's voice stopped her. "Let them show you who they are when they think you have no power." So Elena waited. People thought waiting was weakness because they had never seen what patience could build in the dark. At 6:43 a.m., the rain stopped. The city woke beneath a washed grey sky. Newsstands opened, coffee carts steamed, Men in expensive coats stepped around puddles, unaware that one of the city's most carefully hidden fortunes had shifted like a sleeping dragon opening one eye. At 7:05, Judge Helena Cross joined the emergency hearing by video. Her hair was pinned back, her face bare of patience. Miriam presented the facts with surgical calm. Unauthorized eviction of a legal property owner. Removal of minor children from their residence without preparation. Misappropriation of restricted trust assets. Potential financial misconduct involving trust-backed business facilities. Recorded statements. Eyewitness testimony from Adrian Blackwell. Photographs of belongings in the street. Medical concern regarding Noah's asthma medication. Elena sat still through it all. She did not cry, she did not embellish. When asked if she feared further retaliation, she looked at the sleeping children visible through the open office door. Yes, she said, not because he is brave, because he is cornered. The judge's eyes sharpened. At 7:41, the order was granted. By 8:15, private security under trust authority entered Vale House. Victor met them at the staircase in yesterday's clothes. "You can't come in here," he shouted. The head of security, a woman named Dana Sloan, handed him the court order. "Mr. Hawthorne, you and all unauthorized guests are required to vacate the premises. This is my home." Dana looked around at the portraits, the crest carved over the fireplace, the silver-inlaid initials on the entry table. "No, sir," she said, "it is not." Celeste appeared at the top of the stairs in a silk robe. "Victor, what's happening?" Two officers entered behind the security team. Beatrice stepped from the dining room. "This is outrageous." Dana's expression did not move. "Mrs. Hawthorne, you have 20 minutes to gather personal essentials. Anything belonging to the Vale Trust remains." Beatrice's mouth tightened. "I am Victor's mother. That is not listed as a property right." Celeste tried to slip past with two jewelry cases. Dana blocked her. "Those stay. These are mine." "Receipts." Celeste looked at Victor. Victor looked away. The blue diamond necklace was recovered from the table. So were the emerald earrings Beatrice had worn to 3 charity balls, a ruby bracelet she told friends was a Hawthorne heirloom, and a platinum watch Victor had given himself after closing a deal funded by Vale Collateral. Every item was photographed, tagged, and placed into custody. Neighbors watched from windows. This time, no one laughed. By 9, Victor Hawthorne stood on the sidewalk outside the mansion gates with 2 suitcases, his mother beside him, his mistress behind him, and no umbrella. The sky had cleared. That somehow made it worse. Across town, Elena watched the security feed once, then turned it off. She took no pleasure in seeing them outside. That surprised her. For years, she had imagined what justice might feel like. She thought it would burn bright. She thought it would taste like victory. Instead, it felt like setting down a weight and realizing how deeply it had bruised her. Lily woke around 10 and found her mother sitting beside the window. "Are we going back?" she asked. "Not today." "Why?" "Because houses need to be cleaned after storms." Lily leaned against her. "Dad is the storm." Elena closed her eyes. Children heard everything, even the things adults tried to hide inside metaphors. "Your father made choices," Elena said carefully. "Those choices hurt us, but you and Noah are safe. That's what matters." "Is he going to say sorry?" Elena looked out at the city. Victor had said sorry 1,000 times. Sorry could be a bandage. It could also be a key used by someone who wanted back into the room where they hurt you. "I don't know," she said. Lily thought about this. Would sorry fix it? No. The answer came faster than Elena expected. Lily nodded as though she already knew. At noon, Hawthorne Industries board requested an emergency call. Victor joined from a hotel suite booked under Celeste's name because his personal accounts were restricted. Beatrice sat stiffly in the corner. Celeste paced near the minibar, repeatedly trying and failing to call a stylist, a publicist, and someone named Armand, who apparently knew people at Vogue. On the screen, 12 board members stared at Victor, with expressions ranging from anger to fear. "What is the scope?" asked Malcolm Pierce, the chairman. Victor straightened his tie. "This is a domestic misunderstanding." No one reacted. The CFO spoke next. "Our operating credit is frozen. Temporarily. Our acquisition financing has been withdrawn. That can be renegotiated. Payroll clears Friday," the CFO said. "Without the Vale facility, we have a liquidity crisis." Victor's temper flared. "Then find liquidity." Malcolm leaned toward his camera. "Victor, did you know Elena Vale controlled the trust instruments supporting our debt?" Victor hesitated. That hesitation doomed him. The general counsel spoke. "We also received notice of internal review regarding prior representations you made to the board about source capital." Victor's face darkened. "Careful." "No," Malcolm said. "You be careful. For 8 years, you described certain funding arrangements as founder-secured private capital. They were Vale-backed." Victor slammed a hand on the desk. "My wife supported my company. That is not a crime." "No," the counsel said, "but concealing dependency while leveraging assets you did not control may be." Beatrice stood. "How dare you speak to my son this way?" Every face on the screen turned colder. Malcolm removed his glasses. "Mrs. Hawthorne, this is a board meeting. I know exactly what this is. You vultures smell weakness." "No," Malcolm said, "we smell liability." The board placed Victor on administrative leave at 12:38 p.m. By 1:10, the financial press had the story. Not all of it, not the children, not the mattress. Miriam made sure of that, but enough. Hawthorne Industries facing emergency financing crisis. Founder Victor Hawthorne placed on leave amid trust dispute. Vale Meridian Trust freezes support. Adrian Blackwell watched the headlines appear from his office 3 miles away. His assistant Priya stood in the doorway. "You're named as a witness." "I know." Reporters are asking whether Blackwell Group has exposure. "None." "Are you sure?" Adrian gave her a look. She smiled faintly. "Right, stupid question." "Not stupid, necessary." Priya stepped inside. "There's another question." "Ask it." "Why were you there?" Adrian looked at the photo on his desk. His mother at 50, laughing in a garden, finally safe, finally soft. She had died 2 years ago, before she could see the housing foundation he built in her name open its 100th building. "I saw someone carrying too much alone," he said. Priya's expression changed. She nodded and left without another word. That afternoon, Elena took her children to a private apartment owned by the trust under a name no gossip columnist would recognize. It was warm, quiet, and high above the river. The refrigerator had been stocked. Fresh pajamas waited on the beds. Noah's medication had been replaced. Lily found a shelf of books and touched them as though they might disappear. "Are these ours?" she asked. "For now," Elena said. "What about my drawings?" Elena's heart clenched. Lily's sketchbooks had been in the nursery cabinet. Beatrice had ordered everything thrown into the street. Some had been ruined, some recovered. Elena did not yet know how many. "I'll get whatever I can," she promised. Lily nodded. She did not ask what happened if some things could not be saved. Children of unstable homes learn not to ask questions with painful answers. That night, after the children slept, Elena stood alone in the kitchen and finally allowed herself to shake. Not cry. Shake. Her body replayed the mattress, the street, The laughter, Noah's question, Lily's eyes, Victor's voice, Beatrice's contempt, Celeste's diamonds. Then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You think you won." "Victor." Elena stared at it. Another message appeared. "You have no idea what I can still take from you." For 12 years, threats had lived inside Victor's tone more than his words. A pause before answering, a slammed door, a smile in public while his hand tightened around her wrist, just enough to warn, never enough to mark. His cruelty had been calibrated, always staying on the side of deniability. But now he was careless. Cornered men often were. Elena forwarded the messages to Miriam. Then she typed back only one sentence. "You should stop writing things down." Victor did not reply. At midnight, Adrian received a call from Miriam Rowe. "You gave your statement," she said. "I did. I need more." He sat up in bed. "What happened?" Victor sent threats. "We are handling it, but there's another issue. He may try to move assets through a shell company connected to Blackwell Group's old European logistics deal." Adrian stood and walked to his study. Name: North Star Kestrel. His hand froze over the desk drawer. That name was old. Too old. 5 years earlier, before Blackwell Group became untouchable, Adrian had partnered briefly with a logistics consortium to acquire port access in the Baltics. The deal collapsed when Adrian found irregularities and walked away. North Star Kestrel was one of the entities buried in the paperwork. He had always suspected someone else picked up the pieces. "Victor Hawthorne." "Of course. I'll send you everything I have," Adrian said. "Everything. Everything." A pause. "Even if it hurts you." Adrian looked again at his mother's photo. "Especially then." The next morning, Elena woke to find Noah sitting on the floor beside the window, looking down at the river. "Do you miss him?" she asked gently. Noah shrugged. That was not a child's answer. That was armor. Elena sat beside him. "It's okay if you do." He shouted a lot. "Yes, but sometimes he was nice." "Yes, why?" She breathed carefully, because people can be more than one thing. Noah frowned. Can he be nice and bad? He can make bad choices and still have moments that feel nice. That's confusing. I know. Noah leaned against her. "I don't want to be like him." Elena kissed his hair. "Then tell the truth when it's hard, say sorry when you mean it, and never make someone small just because you feel small." He absorbed this with the solemn attention of a 7-year-old trying to build his future out of his mother's words. "Did he make you small?" he asked. Elena looked at her hands. For years she had folded herself into acceptable shapes, smaller opinions, softer corrections, quieter clothes, fewer questions at dinner, less brilliance, less heritage, less anger, less everything. "Yes," she said. Noah put his small hand over hers. "You're not small." And that was when Elena cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for her son to climb into her lap and hold her with the fierce, clumsy love of a child who did not know how to fix the world but wanted to try. By the third day, the scandal had grown teeth. Miriam's team uncovered emails showing Victor had represented Vail-backed emergency funding as personal founder capital in multiple board presentations. Worse, he had pledged future access to assets he had no authority to pledge. He had not stolen the $8.9 billion fortune because he had never been close enough to touch it, but he had built a paper castle beside it and charged investors admission. Celeste's role was smaller but uglier. She had received jewelry, travel, and cash transfers through accounts classified as client entertainment and strategic relationship development. She had also sent messages to Victor joking about replacing the ghost wife and asking whether Beatrice could make the little heirs disappear to boarding school. When Miriam showed Elena that message, the room went cold. Adrian was present because North Star Kestrel had become relevant. He saw Elena read the line once, then again. Her face did not twist, she did not gasp. She simply placed the paper down. She called my children heirs, Elena said. Miriam nodded. She knew. Yes. The words landed heavily. Celeste had not known everything, but she had known enough to suspect Elena was not poor, not powerless, not ordinary. Perhaps Victor had bragged in fragments. Perhaps Beatrice had hinted. Perhaps Celeste had done what ambitious people often did and searched the cracks. Elena remembered the way Celeste had smiled from the gate. Not amused. Expectant. She had thought she was watching a defeated wife leave. Perhaps she had also thought she was watching the last obstacle between herself and a fortune walk into the rain. Send it to the court, Elena said. Miriam hesitated. Elena, once this enters custody proceedings, it becomes part of a larger record. Good. Adrian watched her carefully. You're sure? She turned to him. I have spent 12 years making things quiet for everyone else. I'm finished confusing silence with peace. The custody order became stronger that afternoon. Victor was granted supervised visitation pending review. Beatrice was barred from unsupervised contact. Celeste was barred entirely. When Victor heard, he threw a glass at a hotel wall. The hotel charged Celeste's card for damages. It declined. By the end of the week, Celeste moved out of the suite. She did not announce it as abandonment. People like Celeste never abandoned sinking ships. They simply remembered urgent appointments elsewhere. Victor found her packing. Where are you going? He demanded. She folded a silk blouse into a suitcase. My sister. You don't have a sister. Then you see the problem with asking questions. He grabbed the suitcase handle. You think you can leave? Celeste looked at his hand, then at his face. For all her vanity, she was not stupid. She had watched him lose power hour by hour, and without power, Victor's charm had turned visibly cheap. Let go, she said. I gave you everything. No, she said coldly. You gave me things that belonged to your wife. The words struck harder because they were true. Victor released the suitcase. Celeste put on sunglasses, though it was evening. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, Victor, you really should have known who you married. Then she left. Beatrice lasted 2 more days. She moved into a private club that had once treated her like royalty. But royalty without credit becomes a guest with an overdue bill. When her access was suspended, she called Victor in a fury. Fix this, she said. I'm trying. You are not trying hard enough. That woman is humiliating us. That woman owns the house you lived in for 12 years. Beatrice went silent. Victor had never spoken to her that way. He sat in his temporary office, surrounded by boxes from Hawthorne Industries. His name had already been removed from the company website pending investigation. Mother, he said, exhausted, did you know? Know what? That Elena had money. A pause too long. Victor closed his eyes. How much did you know? Beatrice's voice became brittle. I knew the Vales were once comfortable. Comfortable. Old families exaggerate. I assumed most of it was gone. Why? Because she let us treat her like it was. There it was. Not remorse. Just the wounded confusion of a person who had mistaken someone's restraint for permission. Victor leaned back in his chair. You threw her things into the street. You told me to make the house ready for Celeste. I didn't tell you to throw away the children's things. You didn't stop me. No, he hadn't. That was the trouble with collapse. It stripped away excuses and left only the shape of what you allowed. Victor ended the call. For the first time since the rain, he sat alone without noise. without mother, without mistress, without lawyers promising strategy, without assistants managing his image. He remembered Alina on their wedding day. Not the ceremony, not the flowers. A moment afterward, in the small room behind the chapel, when she took off her veil and laughed because one of the pins had caught in her hair. "Help me," she said. His hands had trembled as he freed the veil. He had loved her then, or at least he had loved the feeling of being chosen by someone luminous. She had looked at him like he could become the man he pretended to be. When had that become unbearable? Perhaps the first time she corrected his numbers in front of an investor. Perhaps when Lily was born and Alina's attention shifted to someone who needed her more honestly. Perhaps when Victor realized Alina could live without applause, while he needed it the way lungs needed air. His phone buzzed. A message from Miriam Rowe. Court appearance scheduled, mandatory attendance. Attached was a list of claims. Victor read until the words blurred. At Vale House, Alina returned for the first time 10 days after the eviction. She went alone. Miriam advised against it. Adrian offered to accompany her. Dana Sloan insisted security would be on site. Alina accepted security. She refused company. The house smelled of cleaning solution and lilies. The staff had been placed on paid leave during the transition. The rooms were quiet, too quiet. She walked through the foyer where Victor had once kissed her in front of guests while insulting her under his breath. She passed the dining room where Beatrice corrected her seating arrangements. She stood in the nursery doorway and saw Lily's recovered sketchbooks stacked on the bed, warped from rain but mostly intact. Noah's dinosaur lamp had been broken. That nearly undid her. Not the accounts, not the jewelry, not the headlines. A cracked green dinosaur lamp with a crooked smile. Alina picked it up and sat on the edge of her son's bed. In her mind, she was 31 again, holding newborn Noah while Victor stood in the doorway checking his phone. "Come sit with us," she had said. "In a minute." "You said that 20 minutes ago." He looked annoyed. "Some of us are keeping this family afloat." She almost laughed then, exhausted and raw from childbirth. Keeping this family afloat. The night before, she had authorized a bridge loan through one of her holding companies to prevent Victor's supplier default. Instead of telling him, she said, "Your son is awake." Victor sighed, came over, kissed Noah's forehead, and left when the baby started crying. Alina learned then that some people loved children best when they were quiet, clean, and useful for photographs. The memory faded. She placed the broken lamp carefully in a box. Then she went to the master bedroom. Celeste's perfume lingered faintly in the curtains. Alina opened the windows. Cold air rushed in. The closet was half empty. Victor's suits gone, Celeste's gowns gone, Beatrice's furs gone. Alina's clothes remained pushed to one side as they had been for years. Simple dresses, soft sweaters, shoes chosen for school runs and hospital visits and charity kitchens where she worked anonymously twice a month. At the back of the closet sat a locked cedar chest. Victor had never asked about it. That almost made her laugh. Inside were the things she had refused to let marriage erase. Her father's fountain pen, her mother's opera gloves, a photograph of herself at 22 standing on the deck of a Vale shipping vessel in Singapore, wind whipping her hair across her face, a stack of letters from Thomas Vale, a velvet case containing the one piece of jewelry she had always kept separate from the trust vault. A ring, not diamonds, a plain gold band engraved inside. To Alina, who must never forget her own name. Her mother had given it to her at 18. Alina slipped it onto her right hand. It fit. At the court hearing 2 weeks later, Victor arrived looking thinner. His suit was immaculate, but nothing else was. His eyes were shadowed. His confidence, once a tailored thing, now hung badly on him. Alina entered with Miriam. Adrian sat in the back as a witness. He did not approach her. He did not need to. His presence was steady, not possessive, and Alina appreciated the difference more than she expected. Victor watched her walk past. For a moment, he seemed to expect her to look at him. She did not. The hearing was brutal in the way civilized things could be brutal. No shouting, no dramatic confessions, just dates, signatures, bank records, photographs, messages, statements, and the slow suffocation of lies beneath evidence. Victor's attorney tried to frame the eviction as a marital dispute. Miriam showed the court photographs of Noah's medication in the gutter. Victor's attorney argued Alina had concealed financial information. Miriam presented the prenuptial agreement Victor had signed, including clauses acknowledging separate trust structures he had declined to review. Victor's attorney suggested Alina's sudden legal aggression was retaliatory. Miriam played the recording from the gate. Beatrice's voice filled the courtroom. She should be grateful we let her keep that much. Then Victor. Don't let her fool you, Blackwell, she's dramatic. Then Alina's. I don't need rescuing, I need a witness. Adrian watched the judge's face harden. Victor looked down. For once, he had no performance ready. When Alina took the stand, the courtroom shifted. People expected anger from wronged women, tears, perhaps, trembling hands, a voice breaking at the right moment. Alina gave them facts. She described the marriage, the financial arrangements, the children's routines, Victor's increasing hostility, Beatrice's interference, Celeste's presence, the night of the eviction. Only once did her voice change. My children believed they were homeless, she said. That is the harm I cannot forgive. Victor flinched. His attorney rose for cross-examination and made the mistake of underestimating her. Mrs. Vale, isn't it true that you hid your financial status from your husband? Yes. A murmur moved through the room. The attorney looked pleased. So you admit deception? I admit protection. Protection from your husband. Protection from anyone who loved my fortune more than my humanity. The attorney paused. Alina continued calmly. Victor was given every opportunity to know me. He did not ask. He was given documents before marriage. He did not read them. He was given loyalty. He mistook it for weakness. He was given access to a life most people cannot imagine. He mistook it for his own achievement. If concealment occurred, it was not because I hid myself too well. It was because he never bothered to look. No one spoke. Even the judge let the silence stand. Outside the courtroom, reporters shouted questions. Mrs. Vale, are you seeking full custody? Mr. Hawthorne, did you mislead investors? Mr. Blackwell, what was your role that night? Alina kept walking. Victor stopped. That was his mistake. A reporter asked, do you regret throwing your wife out? Victor turned. For one dangerous second, the old Victor returned, the one who could charm a room and bend a story until he stood at its heroic center. Then he looked past the cameras and saw Lily. She was down the hall with Miriam's assistant, holding Noah's hand. She had heard the question. Victor's face changed. Regret, real or sudden, or merely reflected through his daughter's eyes, moved across him like a shadow. Yes, he said. The reporters surged. Victor pushed through them and walked away. The clip went everywhere. Some called it moving, others called it strategy. Alina did not care. Lily asked about it that night. Dad said he regrets it. Alina brushed her daughter's hair gently. I heard. Does that mean he's better? No, sweetheart, regret is a feeling, better is a pattern. How long does a pattern take? Longer than a sentence. Lily considered that, then nodded. Can I still love him? Alina stopped brushing. This was the question she feared most. She turned Lily around and held both her hands. Yes, she said, you can love him, you can miss him, you can be angry, you can feel all of those things. Love does not mean you have to pretend someone didn't hurt you. Lily's eyes filled. Do you still love him? Elena could have lied. Instead, she looked toward the window where the city lights trembled. I love who I hoped he was, she said. I'm grieving who he chose to be. Lily leaned into her arms. The revenge people imagined from headlines was always simple. A woman wronged, a fortune revealed, a husband ruined, a mistress disgraced, a cruel mother cast out. But real revenge was stranger. It was waking up without fear of footsteps in the hall. It was watching Noah eat breakfast without flinching when a glass dropped. It was Lily drawing again. It was Elena opening bank reports and legal files not as a hidden guardian cleaning up Victor's disasters, but as herself. It was walking into the Vale Meridian Trust boardroom for the first time in 12 years and taking the chair at the head of the table. The trustees rose when she entered. Some had known her since childhood. Some had doubted whether she would ever step fully into power. A few had benefited from her absence. Elena noticed all of it. Sit, she said. They sat. The meeting lasted 4 hours. She reviewed restructuring plans, removed 2 advisors who had grown too comfortable, approved a child welfare initiative in her mother's name, and ordered a full audit of any entity connected to Hawthorne Industries. When a senior trustee named Caldwell suggested moving slowly to avoid reputational damage, Elena looked at him until he stopped speaking. My reputation survived a mattress in the rain, she said. It will survive accountability. The audit widened. North Star Kestrel surfaced again. Adrian's documents helped expose a network of side agreements linking Victor to offshore transfers and inflated logistics contracts. Adrian had no current liability, but releasing the records cost him. An old competitor used the moment to question his judgment. A business channel ran a segment asking whether Blackwell had been too close to tainted deals. Priya stormed into his office afterward. I can kill this story. No. They're implying you were involved. I was involved 5 years ago, then I walked away. That nuance won't trend. Truth rarely does. She crossed her arms. You're impossible. I've been told. By women smarter than you. Almost exclusively. Priya rolled her eyes and left. An hour later, Elena called him. I saw the segment, she said. It'll pass. You didn't have to give Miriam those files. Yes, I did. Because of your mother. Adrian looked out at the city. Because of myself. Elena was quiet. He continued, surprising himself. When I was a child, a man with money made my mother feel trapped, not because he had more, but because he convinced her she couldn't survive without what little he gave. I spent my life becoming rich enough that no one could do that to me. Then I watched you in the rain and realized money was never the whole answer. What is? Knowing you can walk away. Elena closed her eyes. Outside her apartment, Noah was laughing at something Lily had drawn. It was the first full laugh Elena had heard from him in weeks. Yes, she said softly, that's part of it. Their friendship grew carefully after that. Not romance. Elena was in no condition for fairy tales, and Adrian was too wise to offer one. He did not send flowers. He did not try to become necessary. He did not mistake proximity to pain for intimacy. He sent practical things. A list of trauma-informed child therapists recommended by his foundation. A contact for a security consultant who specialized in privacy for families. A note saying the press outside the apartment had thinned. Once, after Lily mentioned missing pancakes, Adrian sent a recipe written in his mother's handwriting, scanned from an old card. Elena made them on a Sunday morning. They were terrible. Too dense, slightly burnt, and somehow salty. Lily declared them interesting. Noah asked for cereal. Elena laughed so hard she had to sit down. That laugh healed something no court order could reach. Victor's supervised visits began in a neutral family center with soft chairs and too many pastel walls. The first time, Lily stood behind Elena for 5 minutes before agreeing to enter. Noah refused to let go of his inhaler. Victor looked destroyed when he saw them. Good, Elena thought, then hated herself for thinking it. He knelt, high bugs. Lily stiffened. Noah looked at the floor. The supervisor watched from a corner. Victor swallowed. I'm sorry. Noah asked, for what? Victor blinked. For scaring you. Noah looked up, and Mommy. Victor's mouth tightened with old reflex, old pride, old poison. Elena saw the battle move across his face. Then his shoulders dropped. And your mother, he said, for hurting her. Lily's eyes filled, and my drawings. Victor closed his eyes. Yes, and your drawings. The visit did not fix anything. It was awkward, painful, and full of silences where a father's authority used to sit. But it was honest enough to be a beginning. Or perhaps just honest enough to prove how far there was to go. Beatrice refused such beginnings. She called Elena once from an unknown number. Elena almost didn't answer. When she did, Beatrice skipped greeting. I want to see my grandchildren. No. A sharp inhale, you vindictive little. Elena ended the call. Beatrice called again. Elena blocked the number. That was all. No speech, no confrontation, no final dramatic exchange where Beatrice understood the depth of her cruelty. Some people never gave you the satisfaction of understanding. Peace meant accepting that and locking the door anyway. Celeste tried a different route. 3 months after the eviction, she sold an interview to a glossy magazine, presenting herself as another victim of Victor's lies. She wore soft makeup and a cream sweater, speaking of manipulation, heartbreak, and the complicated pain of loving a powerful man. The internet mocked her for 3 days. Then Miriam filed a civil claim for the restricted jewelry. Celeste's public sympathy tour ended abruptly. In deposition, she cried. Miriam did not offer tissues. Miss Marlowe, she said, were you aware the blue diamond necklace belonged to the Vale Trust? No. Miriam slid over a printed message. Celeste to Victor, does the Ice Queen know you took the Vale diamonds for me? Celeste stared at it. That was a joke. Miriam slid over another. Celeste to Victor, once your mother pushes her out, how fast can you get control of the trust? Celeste's face went grey. Still joking, Miriam asked. Celeste settled within a week. The money was returned, the jewelry recovered, her social invitations vanished faster than they had appeared. By then, Hawthorne Industries had been broken apart. Its viable divisions were sold. Employees were protected through a fund Elena approved, despite legal advisors warning her she had no obligation to clean up Victor's mess. I know, she said, I'm not doing it for him. Thousands kept their jobs. Victor lost his. He also lost the hotel suite, the club memberships, the drivers, the assistants, the borrowed shine of a life he had mistaken for his birthright. 6 months after the rain, Elena returned to Vale House with Lily and Noah. Not to live there. To say goodbye. The mansion had been restored to its old quiet beauty, the portraits cleaned, the floors polished, the nursery repaired, Noah's dinosaur lamp replaced by an identical one Elena found through a collector of discontinued children's decor, which was absurd and expensive and worth every penny. They walked room to room. Lily stood in the dining room. I don't like this room. Neither do I, Elena said. Noah looked at the staircase. Is Dad coming back here? No. Is Grandma? No. Are we? Elena looked around. For years she had confused inheritance with obligation. Vale House had belonged to her family for generations, and she had let that history trap her almost as thoroughly as Victor had. The house was beautiful. It was also full of echoes. No, she said, we're not. Lily looked relieved. What will happen to it? She asked. Elena smiled. 3 months later, Vale House reopened as the Vale Center for Women and Children, a private transitional residence and legal support foundation for families escaping financial abuse. Coercive control and sudden displacement. The ballroom became a childcare center. The dining room became a community kitchen. Beatrice's favorite sitting room became a legal clinic. The room where Celeste once tried on diamonds became storage for donated coats, shoes, school bags, and new mattresses. On opening day, Elena stood at the entrance wearing a navy dress, her mother's ring, and no diamonds. Adrian stood in the crowd beside Priya. Miriam Rose stood near the front, pretending not to be emotional. Reporters gathered beyond the gates. This time, Elena walked toward them willingly. Mrs. Vale, one called, do you consider this your revenge? Elena glanced back through the open doors. Inside, a little girl she did not know was choosing a backpack. Her mother stood nearby, crying quietly while a volunteer helped her fill out housing forms. In the old dining room, Noah was showing another child the pancake station, speaking with the authority of someone who had survived terrible pancakes and lived to warn others. Lily was tapping drawings to a wall labeled New Beginnings. Elena faced the cameras. No, she said, revenge is what happens when pain wants an audience. This is what happens when pain is put to work. The quote ran everywhere. Some praised her, some criticized her. Some said she had planned the entire scandal for attention, because there would always be people who looked at a woman rebuilding from ashes and complained about the smoke. Elena did not read most of it. That evening, after the ceremony, Adrian found her in the garden behind the house. The rain had started again, softer than before, the kind of rain that washed rather than wounded. You disappeared, he said. I was never good at parties. That was not a party, that was a controlled explosion with catering. She laughed. For a moment, they stood beneath the garden arch, where vines climbed old stone. Beyond the windows, the center glowed with warmth and movement. Adrian looked at her. Your father would be proud. Elena's smile faded into something tender. He would pretend not to be. Oh, that kind of father. The kind who thought emotions were best expressed through complicated trust structures. Effective, apparently. She turned the ring on her finger. For years, I thought his lesson was to hide. And now I think he wanted me to learn the difference between being unseen and seeing clearly. Adrian nodded. A comfortable silence settled. Then he said, Victor called me. Elena stilled. When? Yesterday. What did he want? To know if I could help him find work. She looked at him sharply. I said no, Adrian added. Elena exhaled. Not because of you, he said, because he didn't ask how to become useful. He asked how to become important again. Elena looked through the rain at the lit windows. That sounds like him. He also asked me to tell you he regrets everything. She closed her eyes. The words came from far away now, from another shore. I believe he regrets the consequences. Yes. Maybe one day he'll regret the harm. Maybe. She opened her eyes. That won't be my burden to measure. Inside, Lily waved through the glass. Noah pressed his face beside hers, making a ridiculous expression. Elena waved back. Adrian watched her, and for the first time since the night in the rain, he allowed himself to think not of rescue, not of debt, not of old ghosts, but of possibility. He said nothing of it. That was why Elena trusted him. A year passed. Not cleanly, healing never moved in straight lines. Noah had nightmares for months. Lily sometimes hid food in her backpack, afraid comfort could vanish overnight. Elena still woke at certain sounds, her body expecting Victor's anger before her mind remembered he was gone. But there were good days. Many of them. The children began therapy. Lily joined an art class. Noah learned to swim. Elena moved them into a townhouse with sunlight in the kitchen and no portraits of dead ancestors watching the stairs. Victor moved into a modest apartment downtown. At first he fought everything, the divorce settlement, the custody restrictions, the financial claims, the investigations, the loss of his company, the loss of his name as a symbol of power. Then slowly, perhaps because there was no audience left for his outrage, he became quieter. His visits with the children improved, not transformed, improved. He learned to arrive on time. He learned not to blame Elena in subtle ways. He learned that Lily would leave the room if he raised his voice. He learned that Noah watched apologies more carefully than gifts. One afternoon, a year and 2 months after the rain, Victor asked Elena to meet him at the family center before the children arrived. Miriam advised against it. Elena went anyway, with security nearby and no illusions. Victor stood when she entered. He looked older, not ruined in the dramatic way tabloids preferred, just diminished, like a man finally living at the size of his own character. "Thank you for coming," he said. Elena sat across from him. "You have 10 minutes. He nodded. For once, he did not seem offended by the boundary. "I found something," he said. He placed a plastic folder on the table. Inside were several sheets of paper, warped and stained. Lily's drawings. Elena touched the folder, but did not open it. "They were in a storage box Mother kept," Victor said. "I don't know why." Elena knew why. Beatrice kept trophies, proof of control, evidence that she could take what mattered and decide when or whether to return it. "Your mother gave them to you." Victor's mouth twisted. "No, she left the club owing money. They sent her stored items to me." "Where is she?" "Arizona, with a cousin she hates." Elena felt nothing. Not joy. Not pity. Just a door remaining closed. Victor looked at the folder. "I should have stopped her." "Yes. I should have stopped myself before there was anything to stop." Elena said nothing. His eyes lifted. "I loved you badly." The sentence was so unexpected that Elena looked at him fully. Victor swallowed. "I used to tell myself I loved you, but I think I loved what your belief in me let me believe about myself. And when you saw too much, I punished you for it." There was no dramatic music, no rain against the windows, no courtroom, no cameras. Just a man saying one true thing far too late. Elena felt the old ache stir, but it no longer ruled her. "That may be the first honest thing you've said to me in years," she said. He gave a small, broken laugh. "I'm trying. For the children." "Yes," he paused, "and because I don't like who's left when no one is clapping." That too sounded true. Elena stood with the folder. "I hope you keep trying," she said. He looked up, and she saw the question he wanted to ask. Could she forgive him? Could they be friends? Could the past become less permanent if he suffered enough? She answered the question he did not voice. "Trying does not earn you access to me, Victor. It earns you the chance to become safer for them." His eyes reddened. He nodded. When Lily arrived and saw the drawings, she cried. Victor did not try to touch her until she moved toward him first. That mattered. Elena noticed. Lily noticed too. Healing, Elena thought, was not a crown placed on the head after victory. It was 1,000 small moments in which no one repeated the old harm. That winter, the Vale Center expanded into 3 cities. Adrian's foundation partnered with Alina, though the agreement was negotiated so fiercely by both sides that Miriam joked she should charge double for having to watch 2 billionaires pretend they were not flirting over indemnity clauses. Alina ignored her. Adrian did not. "Were we flirting?" he asked Alina later. They were standing in the new center's unfinished kitchen, surrounded by blueprints and dust. "No," Alina said. "Good, I'd hate to be unprofessional. Extremely unprofessional. Borderline scandalous. Think of the indemnity clauses." He smiled. She tried not to. Failed. It scared her, that smile, not because Adrian scared her, because warmth did. After betrayal, kindness could feel like a trap with better lighting. Adrian seemed to understand. He never pushed. He never asked for more than she offered. He stood beside her at public events, then left before anyone could turn them into a headline. He helped when help was useful and stepped back when it was. One evening, after a fundraiser, Alina found him outside holding 2 paper cups of terrible coffee. "I assumed you escaped through the side door," he said. "You assumed correctly." He handed her a cup. She tasted it and grimaced. "This is awful." "Yes. Why would you give me this?" "So you'd know I'm not trying to impress you." She laughed, and the sound felt easier now. They walked without destination, past closed shops and glowing windows. Snow began to fall, soft and uncertain. "Do you ever miss who you were before?" Adrian asked. Alina thought about the quiet wife in the mansion, the woman who knew every secret account, but not how to say aloud that she was lonely. She thought about her younger self in Singapore, hair in the wind, before love became a lesson. She thought about the night in the rain and the mattress on her shoulder. "I miss who I might have been if I had learned sooner," she said, "but I'm proud of who came back for me." Adrian looked at her. "Who came back?" Alina smiled. "Me." He nodded, as though that was the only answer that made sense. The divorce finalized in spring. Alina wore cream to court, not white, not black, cream because Lily chose it and said it looked like new paper. Victor signed without contesting the final terms. He kept a modest retirement account, supervised to expanded custody pathway, and enough dignity to leave through a side exit without speaking to reporters. Beatrice sent a letter the week after. Miriam read it first, then summarized it as 3 pages of venom-wearing perfume. Alina did not read it. She burned it in the fireplace of the townhouse, while Lily and Noah roasted marshmallows over the flames, which was probably not advisable and absolutely satisfying. "Was that important?" Noah asked. "No," Alina said. "Then why burn it?" "Because some things don't deserve storage." Lily held up a marshmallow. "Can we burn my math homework?" "No." "Worth asking." They laughed. For the first time in years, Alina felt the house around her not as shelter from danger, but as a container for joy. On the anniversary of the night in the rain, Alina returned alone to a store row. She did not plan to. Her car simply passed the corner, and she asked the driver to stop. The street looked ordinary, expensive, clean, indifferent. People hurried under umbrellas. A dog barked from behind a gate. Somewhere a piano played behind tall windows. The place where she had lifted the mattress was empty. Of course it was. The world rarely marked the exact spot where a life changed. Alina stepped onto the sidewalk. She could almost see herself there, soaked coat, bare feet, Lily and Noah behind her, Victor laughing, Celeste glittering, Beatrice shouting, Adrian stepping from his car, the mattress slipping, the phone recording, the first smile. She had thought revenge began that night. She was wrong. Revenge had begun years earlier, In every moment she refused to become what they said she was. It began when she read every contract, when she protected the trusts, when she loved her children more than her comfort, when she survived loneliness without letting it rot her heart, when she walked toward the legal firm instead of back to the gates. That night had not awakened a queen. It had revealed one. A car stopped behind her. She turned. Adrian stepped out, holding an umbrella. For a second, they stared at each other, then both laughed. "Are you following me, Mr. Blackwell?" "No, but that sounds much more romantic than the truth, which is that Miriam told me you might come here." "Traitor. She worries. She invoices. Both can be true." He opened the umbrella over them. Elena looked at the mansion gates down the street, now bearing a discreet plaque for the Vale Center. "A year ago," she said, "I thought this street had seen me at my lowest. And now I think it witnessed my refusal to stay there." Adrian's voice softened. "That's better." "Yes." Rain began to fall harder, drumming against the umbrella. Elena held out her hand beyond its edge, letting the water strike her palm. Then she did something that would have been impossible a year before. She stepped out from under the umbrella. Adrian watched her, confused but smiling. Elena tilted her face to the rain. She was not cold this time, not barefoot, not carrying a mattress, not followed by frightened children, not chased by laughter. She was simply alive beneath the weather. Adrian stepped beside her, lowering the umbrella. "You'll ruin your coat," he said. "It's mine." "Good point." They stood in the rain like fools, both laughing now, while a store row watched from behind its expensive windows. Somewhere inside the Vale Center, a mother was being handed dry clothes. A child was choosing a book. A lawyer was explaining that being thrown away did not mean being powerless. A volunteer was carrying a new mattress up the stairs. And Elena Vale, once mistaken for a beggar by people who had lived on her mercy, looked down the street where her old life had ended and her real one had begun. She did not feel regret. She did not feel hatred. She did not even feel the need to look back at those who had lost everything they thought made them untouchable. Victor had his consequences. Celeste had her silence. Beatrice had her bitterness. Elena had her children, her name, her work, her fortune, her freedom, and a future wide enough to breathe inside. That was the part they never understood. They thought revenge meant leaving them with nothing. But the deepest revenge was that, after all they had done, Elena Vale still became everything.